Council meeting in order. Everybody stand for the pledge, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Clerk, take the roll.
O'Connor.
Here.
Morissette.
Here.
Alms.
Here.
DeZio.
Here.
Weber.
Here.
Atkins Hoggett. Here. Hall.
Here.
All right, we will go to comments and suggestions from citizens present. This is your opportunity to say whatever is on your mind. Keep it limited to things that are not on the agenda. Anybody have a comment? Anybody have a comment? Anybody have a comment? Hearing no comments, close that portion of the agenda. Excuse me. Discussion and possible action on consent agenda items. Oh, excuse me. Ramsey, do you have something to say? Yeah. Something that's not on the agenda?
I don't know. Because EMS is on the agenda later.
Is it about EMS or?
Yeah.
Okay.
Let me go grab it. I'm right behind you there.
First of all, thank you for the opportunity to speak today. Ramsey, Hudson, Wisconsin. I'm a 38-year-old individual that loves to help people and loves to serve people. And I would like to bring something up to you that is not EMS related, and it's the subject of transportation. No, the St. Clair County Transit Commission has done an extreme amount of work on transportation, which we all should be very grateful for. And I was wondering if the city might want to have some dialogue about accessible, affordable transportation, because it would benefit everybody. Now, for those of you that know me, I went to the University of Wisconsin Whitewater from 2000 to 2007, and they had $3 rides, and they had 7 accessible brands that took people places And I was wondering if the city might want to get involved in a ride share with River Falls or New Richmond or something, so that people with disabilities or people who don't drive can have access to rides. I know the mayor said he wanted to study it at one time last year, but I just wanted to see where we're at in the process, because I think it would benefit everybody. That's all I have on transportation. God bless Hudson. God bless America.
Thank you, Ramsey. Any other comments? Any other comments? Any other comments? So, somebody in the back there. Marion?
Marion Weber, 604 Grandview Drive. I second that. I think it should be part of all of our planning for transportation. And we talk about our sidewalks and our crosswalks and our improvements on Highway 35. I think that making everything accessible to all of us is a very important piece of what our jobs are. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Any other comments? Any other comments? Close that portion of the agenda. Discussion and possible action on consent agenda items.
Consent agenda items for tonight's meeting are as follows. Approve the regular meeting minutes from the March 25th, 2019 regular council meeting. Approve the following claims in an amount of $651,640.92. Approve the operator license application for Kevin Nelson. Approve the architect design services for the Grandview Park restroom facility in the amount of $13,000. Approve the bid received from A1 Excavating in the amount of $1,449,240.50 for the 2019 Vine Street Improvement Project, and the alternate bid of $91,170 for the Hagen Street Trail. Approve the conditional use permit to add additional signage to the freestanding sign at the Plaza 94 Shopping Center located at 1701 through 1801 Ward Avenue, Cross, Anderson. Approve of setting a public hearing date for May 6, 2019 for an amendment to Municipal Code Chapter 2255, zoning to include small animal or reptile education businesses. Approve the scope of work and the LOE for 2019 street maintenance in the amount of $4,000 and authorization to proceed with advertisement for bids. Approve the appointment of a finance director. Approve the purchase of a parking enforcement vehicle for the police department in the amount of $16,895.
Can you pull that one for me?
Yes. Approve the temporary beer wine license application to the Hudson Area Library Foundation for the Gatsby Gala scheduled for May 11, 2019 from 6 to 9 p.m. at the library.
Move for approval.
Second.
That's without motion and second to approve without item J?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Right? Okay. Roll call?
Morissette.
Yes.
Alms.
Yes.
DeZiel.
Yes.
Weber.
Yes.
Toggett.
Yes.
Hall.
Yes.
Motion's approved. Item J.
So I didn't know if the chief is here or somebody from the police
Jason.
department that can answer
J,
that.
Lieutenant.
Okay.
Sarah.
Ask them some tough ones, Paul. You didn't have enough time on the other committee.
Yeah, it went way too easy earlier, so this is payback.
No, it's all good. I'm just curious. I just wanted some more information.
Sure.
So can you just walk me through a little bit? currently how do we handle the parking enforcement and, do we use a vehicle, do we not? Or just, can you walk me through what's currently happening and sort of why you feel the need for another vehicle?
Sure. Right now, everything's done on foot. And my understanding, I've been kind of out of the loop a little bit in regards to this new parking program. I know a little bit about it, but my understanding is that they're going to attach license plate readers to this new vehicle, and that's one of the reasons that we need a vehicle now as part of the parking program.
I can help answer some questions. I think Mike Johnson as well could answer some questions.
Okay, yeah.
As well.
Do you want to?
So that is true. I mean, besides saving manpower,
Okay.
the vehicle will be equipped, which is tied into the computer system on a national database. So, Mike, if you want to take it over.
I think the main point is, we're going from a pay-by-space to a pay-by-plate system. So this vehicle is really the main component of that. So as the vehicle's patrolling, or I guess not patrolling, what do you call it, doing meter enforcement, the cameras will pick up on, if a license plate has overparked its time in a space, in a zone. It'll also alert the police department if there's a vehicle in town that's stolen or otherwise a vehicle of more interest to the police department. So there's a law enforcement component too, and it keeps that meter enforcement or meter coordinator, whoever's doing the enforcement, keeps them safe too, right? Because if there's a stolen vehicle or something like an Amber Alert or something like that, that person will be alerted right away along with the PD, so enforcement action can take place appropriately. Does that help?
Sort of, and I haven't worked on the, I don't know the background. I know a lot of work has gone into the comprehensive parking piece.
Yes.
So the question I just have is this like a essential piece to enforcement with reading the plates and, getting around town? Is that, does the whole sort of premise of enforcement rest on us having a vehicle in order to be able to do this?
Efficiently, yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Move to approve?
Second.
Motion and second to approve. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's approved. Discussion and possible action related to proposals submitted by St. Croix EMS and Lakeview EMS for EMS services.
Mr. Mayor, if I would, in the previous committee meetings, I kind of backgrounded how we got to where we got. And so if it is okay with everybody on the council here, I'd like to submit what I backgrounded just for the record instead of reading it, unless you want me to read it. Is that doable? Okay. If you wouldn't mind putting that into the minutes for the meeting. So in the last committee meeting, I kind of brought together some sort of desires as I kind of just stepped away from the process for a second just to look at, what do I want? What should we be looking for my family, my neighbors, our community? And so I wanted to add a little bit of color to that. So the first point that I made was 2 staffed ambulances ready to take a call 24/7, 365. And a little bit more behind that is with our expected growth as a city, I really don't feel appropriate to decrease to 1.5 ambulances, only to potentially or most likely increase it back up to 2 in the years to come. The ability to add more resources to the area in case all ambulances are busy, closer than calling mutual aid from a neighboring community. And basically I'm just saying here what I mean is that we are reliant obviously on other communities and their staffing in cases where we need access to more help. I would like to have the ability to staff up, as it were.
Are you saying then a third? Is that what your bottom line is? You want a third truck available to be staffed?
Potentially. I mean, more resources backing our 2 ambulances in case in case of an extreme or an emergency, right? So there's three things happening at the same time. Ability to staff up instead of having to reach out to River Falls, but even more likely reaching out to a New Richmond or Baldwin, something that's further away. I want something that's closer. That makes sense? The next points I really kind of put together now. It's just staff, and generally looking to, I'd like to have a culture where staff view serving our area as their full-time job, making a wage that is competitive to the area in which we live, and where employment is long-term, not a means to learn and take the training elsewhere. And what I really mean by all of that is that I believe in the sustaining of an individual will ultimately lead to the sustainability of the organization. It also means that I don't want Hudson's future to be beholden to the practice of growing and then letting talent go. I'd like to see long-term. Our EMS service managed by a person with the highest requirement for licensure as their employees, meaning a paramedic level licensure is a minimum requirement. And that head of EMS services to be a person who has been a director of EMS services for at least 5 to 7 years. A facility in Hudson to be located on the hill that is more central to our service area. A facility with the ability to house EMS personnel and equipment for at least 30 years, and that's really kind of going back to how long that building could be up and maintained. Ambulances to be equipped with cutting-edge technology and to equip without apprehension in terms of expense. And then lastly, a defined and robust program of first responders. We do not have a formalized program in the city yet. One thing that this entire process has really taught me is that an ambulance service and any ambulance service, it takes time for ambulances to get there unless you're right next to them, right? Even 6 minutes is time. And so if one, in my district, I know a lot of healthcare professionals, if one of them could help save a neighbor's life by responding in far less time than any ambulance, I think why not create a program for that to happen? So those are sort of the desires, and ever since defining these desires, I've really been asking myself, what is the right fit from the RFP process to best deliver on these expectations from a safety perspective, and to deliver these on a model of sustainability. I have come to the conclusion that the best fit for the City of Hudson from a safety perspective first, and a fiduciary perspective second. I move to enter into contract negotiations with Lakeview, and that the contract negotiations occur with multiple elected officials.
And I will second that. And I want to read something as well.
Got a motion and a second. I guess we should open that up for discussion.
If I could comment. EMS service to the City of Hudson. As the process has drawn out for almost 4 years, it's been clear to me that we have a department in the city that does not and has not functioned up to its contractual agreements with its municipal partners, affecting the quality of service that we all have come to know and expect. The bottom line issue is safety to the people that use EMS service, both patients and our EMS staff. Safety is the motivating factor in any EMS service, and can they deliver on time with the best results possible for any given medical emergency. There is no one around this table that has supported EMS service and our staff more than me. That being said, my father, a former longtime police officer for the City of Hudson, taught me that the value of treating our EMS, fire, and police officers with the utmost respect by supporting, comforting, and creating an environment that was a sense of being normal life for all of our volunteers in the city's Hudson's emergency services. Something that most people take for granted. Missing the holidays, missing the son or daughter's big game. Missing that special day that your family members are all at, but you, because you want to volunteer to help save lives for little or no pay, but for the sense of duty. What most of us lifelong Hudson residents need to understand is that Hudson is growing. Like it or not, there are things that maybe it's just time for us to realize we have outgrown the ability to provide the service expected by our residents. Hudson continues to grow. The city and the county are one of the fastest growing in the state of Wisconsin. The expense of services being provided is out of reach. Managing the growing and aging population has been a staffing issue, creating a liability that puts lives at risk. Increasing EMS services from anywhere from 8% to 15% to 85%, or whatever number comes up from whoever, is a hard financial number to pass on to the end user and our tax-paying citizens. Increasing the wages, new buildings, all contributes to the overall increase in the higher costs. We simply cannot manage EMS service without an incredible increase of taxes on our citizens and the end user. Anybody that is in business has looked at a pro forma or a P&L, would be bankrupt or out of business. It's not fair for our governmental entities, Hudson and our partners, should subsidize a failing business financially. Believe me, if I saw a way to financially sustain our own EMS service, I would most definitely support keeping it. We simply cannot tax enough into the foreseeable future to make it sustainable. Our taxes are already viewed as very high. Why would we not accept a service that would not cost the city of Hudson but charge the user? The service that is being proposed will assure fully staffed ambulances, a new building housing 365 ambulance and crew. If there's something we need or don't like, then we negotiate it with the service to our wants and needs and put it in the contract. Folks, it's about safety now. We have put the city in legal liability. God forbid somebody would die during an emergency call and we were unable to provide the services needed. Whether a staffing issue or not, we cannot not afford to have two ambulances 24/7, 365 with a full crew. We at this point cannot say we would have that coverage, which is so desperately needed, certainly during the summer times. March 9th, we did not have that. In fact, there have been numerous probably times. Yes, human errors happen, but if we are not on our A game, people's safety will be compromised. If we as a city fail to provide the tools and resources to any of our departments, then we're putting the city in legal liability, and shame on us. We should not be neglecting the oath of office we took to uphold the city's best interests. You can't ignore the jeopardy we will keep the city in if we don't change EMS model in Hudson. Is it the right answer? I can't answer it. But at the present time, staffing, financials, and EMS building liability are all putting safety at risk, which means it's not working. The St. Croix EMS all should be commended for the work they've done and will do. EMS staff before you and EMS staff now have all contributed to the exceptional service to our community without question. In the days of social media, it's easy to be mean and criticize from behind a computer. Nothing hurt this process more than the mean-spirited, ugly accusations and flat-out mistruths about all of us at the table and beyond. We have gone through a lot of information. So much information that most people don't understand the solution of the problem, which directions would make the most sense to stop putting people's lives in danger. Every member of our EMS service should hang their heads high and know that what you have all accomplished, all the lives you have saved, has been inspirational. Thank you for all your service, but now it's time to move on for the sake of our community's well-being. It's time for all of us to come together, and we need to respect each other's opinion, agree to disagree, but ultimately come together as a council and a community and support whoever is providing our service. Our democracy allows us all to have opinions, but it doesn't allow us to be disrespectful, mean, hurtful, or any other word that hurts. We are not all going to agree on policy decisions made now or in the future, but just remember, each of us are looking out for the city of Hudson and what's best moving forward. We have all worked very hard and will continue to, but let's move together forward with respect and thoughtfulness for each other and each of us, and the thoughtfulness that our residents deserve and expect. Thank you.
I've got some remarks prepared. Budgets reflect the moral values of the people who set them. What does our budget say about how we value St. Croix EMS? One of my constituents was very clear that although we say we have tight budgets, we can always find money for new police cars and dump trucks and a fire station, so he believes we can do a better job of funding St. Croix EMS if we make it a priority. For decades, the cheapest and easy solutions rather than what is best for the city's residents have been implemented, not just for EMS, but in many different areas. We need to do a better job of analyzing the expected results of our decisions. If we privatize this, what will be next? Fire, police, snow plowing? Thanks, Bill, for starting the conversation on what we need. I agree with a lot of what you're saying here on this sheet, but I have some additions. The most important piece is getting a paramedic to the scene as quickly as possible. The chase vehicles are the better solution for this requirement. Along with the chase vehicles, the 2 staffed ambulances need to be dedicated to our service area, not coming from somewhere in Minnesota. All of Lakeview's ambulances are available to their huge service area, and there have been times when the responses to 911 calls in the town of Hudson have been sent from Stillwater. Also imperative in getting a paramedic to the scene is that the ambulances must be able to get information directly from the county dispatch center, and there can be no delays or possible errors relaying information through Alina's dispatch center. This has been a known issue for a while, and Lakeview has not addressed this problem. I will stop there. I would prefer to make a commitment to St. Croix EMS and remodeling the Ward Avenue building. And I believe that the first step of that process would be hiring an interim chief in the same way that River Falls hired one.
Well, as you can imagine, I have some thoughts on the matter. So today I had, well, I first want to talk a couple items that, just to Randy, to your points. The fee to the end user, you mentioned a couple of times that that we would have to increase our service price in order to sustain St. Croix EMS, and you didn't see that as a reasonable thing for us to do. However, we've received information, even as much as this past weekend, that we've seen a Lakeview actual bill for $3,800, and that is a lot more than what our St. Croix EMS bill would be to a end user. And I think the thought I have is if we were free to charge that much, then we wouldn't be having a discussion on a financially unstable department. I mean, that would be more than enough to sustain if we're willing to go as high as that. On that same vein, talking about cost, you know, we spend less than we've created a perception, and I think we did it ourselves. We've created a public perception that that the department is an incredible drain on our city's financial resources. And the fact is that we spend less than 3% of our general fund budget on EMS. We spend more on the community development, we spend more on our elections, we spend more on the library, we spend more on our parks, more on our fire department, more in public works, and more in the police department. And it is getting a very small fraction, and so it is not an incredible drain as we have painted it out to be. If we were to increase even, you know, we know that to support it we would need to increase it, but even to 500,000, it's still less than 5% of the city's budget. We've also created, I believe, in my opinion, a public perception that our staffing is a huge issue. And what I hear when I talk to the folks in the department is that it hasn't been. And we've seen the March report now. There was only 2 shifts that only had 1 ambulance in the entire month of March. February is better than January. So I disagree that we can't fully staff 2 ambulances that are our own and stationed here in Hudson. You also talked about, okay, so then that I just wanted to mention those 2 things before I mention a couple of others. So today I had an opportunity to chat with a fellow, Kevin Brunner. He is the president of the company that put out this, for the director position for Devin's job. And so I had a couple questions about his company, and I gave him a call. And in looking up their company, they do a lot of recruitment. In fact, they also do organizational studies, and could have been contacted by us for the company that could have helped Josh put together the EMS proposal. They specialize in it. They have 3 individuals on staff. I had a piece of paper here with their names on it. Yes, Tim Franz, who is a former fire chief and EMS director. Jim Anita, I didn't write it down right. He's a professor who now teaches EMS, teaches people how to be the director of EMS department. And he said also on staff is Dr. Steve Hines. He's a PhD who I quoted him as, he's the father of city management in Wisconsin. He's actually the fellow that recruited Devin, he was instrumental in starting this organization up. So I was a little surprised because I remember sitting here one day when Bill made the motion to go out to RFP. I remember saying during that meeting, now Devin and Brenda, you're going to be providing support and resources and answers to Josh as he goes through this process, right? And the response I got was, oh, well, I don't think we can, because we're going to be judging the proposals when they come back. And I was appalled at that, because they're the department heads. They're the people in the department that are supposed to be working to enrich and guide and support our departments. And I was confused. Now, I was still very new to this table, so I didn't maybe speak up as much as I would have wished. However, I was a little surprised that we knew of a resource that we could have directed Josh to that specializes in exactly what we needed, and we failed to do that. And instead, we left Josh kind of flapping in the wind to find his own business plan developer who, yes, writes business plans, and yes, is a process improvement specialist, and yes, I think did a pretty good job considering all, but he's not an expert in EMS. We had a resource. We denied our department interim director, well, he's not really, but operations supervisor, access to a known thing that could have really helped him. And
if I could interrupt, Sarah, I was not aware that this firm did that. I haven't had any contact with this firm in 18 years.
Well, maybe we all should have gotten in our hands a little bit dirtier and helped him find a company that was
I'm not questioning that, but just, and I don't know that Brenda and I said we wouldn't help. We needed to understand what our role in the thing was going to be, and Brenda provided hours and hours and hours and hours of help for Josh. So I just want to clarify that.
I just wanted to point out that, you know, there were better resources out there that we could have assisted in finding. That all being said, At this point, I would like to pursue a parallel track in that, well, even last week, Joy, our former mayor's wife, stood up and said that the way that we maintain local support in this deal is by getting a really strong contract, by putting teeth in the contract that when there are deficiencies that show up down the road, that we have a way that we can go back and say, no, 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 you said this and you did that, and the ramifications of that failure are XYZ penalty or a financial penalty or whatever the case may be. But to say today that we're going to cut off and we're going to go with contract negotiations with Lakeview and telling our community and our department, thanks for your service, but so long, we will blow up that department and we will blow up every single tool we have in our negotiating box when we go to that table. Because now we are the person with a rundown, broken down car, it's totaled even. I'm in the used sales car lot and I say, hey, I need a car, mine's broken, and I want to buy that one right there for sure today. How much does it cost? But I'm for sure buying, for sure I'm buying that car. How much does it cost? Well, that car is $100,000, you know? We're leaving, we're taking nothing to the table with us. How can we go to a negotiating table without a parallel track of where we're actually lifting up our own department as well during the same 2-month period of time or whatever it is? If we just say we're going to, for any other word's sake, you know, we're going to dismantle our own city department and then we're going to negotiate a contract, they can say no to anything that we request. Why wouldn't they? You know, I want a termination clause that says we can get out. How are we going to demand that? If we blow up our department, we have no choice. We have nothing. We're bringing nothing to the table. So I think you know, the strongest thing anybody can bring to any negotiating table in any realm, in any deal, anywhere, is the ability to stand up and walk away from it. And so I'd like to propose that we run a parallel track of fleshing out the department's strategic plan.
Already got a motion on the table.
Okay. I would like to just have us consider that you consider, prior to us voting on your motion, that we have a parallel plan going forth that looks at, so, sorry, Bill, your points from last week, they are great. They came out 5 days ago. We did not give that direction to Josh when we said do a RFP. They were like, RFP, okay, but we didn't draw out exactly what it looked like. But now we have a better picture, and I think the last few months process, we've all learned so much about what the picture is that we want. And so I don't think our time has been wasted. I think we all have learned an incredible amount, and we're able more to go to that negotiating table and go down to a strategic planning level for our current department, that what would it take to develop a plan that would fit this bill. And then we have two things we can compare apples to apples. Lakeview doesn't hold all of the cards in the deck, and we're be able to negotiate a stronger contract. And then at the end of that, we can say, this is what the strategic plan for the department was, that if implemented, will achieve this goal, your goals. And actually, I kind of believe, but we would have to come together as a group and flush this out and make sure that we all are in agreement and have a vote. That majority says this is the criteria. But we flush that out, we agree to it, then we get together, we flush out what are these contract critical factors that we want to agree on before we send someone over to Lakeview to say, you know, here, let us sign your you know, what are those? I want specifics. I want to say if they terminate, if and when they terminate, that we get some ambulances out of the deal. I want to say that when they hit a certain number of mutual aid calls in a given 3-month period, that they have to add an ambulance that's stationed here all the time. I want specifics. I want teeth in that contract. And when we get to the end of that contract negotiating, I want to be able to say we can still choose either one. Because if we say we can't choose either one when the end game happens, then why even go through contract negotiations? We'll just sign what they dish out, right? We got to have teeth in that contract. We can't build teeth in the contract unless we can't walk away from our current department. Does that make sense at all? Mm-hmm. So that's what I have to say so far today.
A lot. Can I just go back on a couple of things?
Of course.
The budget. When you talk about the budget, I get where you're going about the percentage of our total end budget. I guess my question, as we went through the budget process for 2019 and asking the department heads to go back and cut where they want, or where they could, not where they want, I guess what department are we as a group willing to cut from in order to have more money to St. Croix EMS? And I think personally the answer to that is raising the entire boat, right? The entire pot of money in a referendum.
Well, we are growing our community as well. We have annexation on the table tonight. We just completed a process. We have I know that the TIF district is impacting our finances down the road, but we have people moving to town. We have a little buffer period of time to come up with that answer, or to come up with the dollar amount. And by, say, for example, this company, lost a piece of paper again, but Public Administration Associates, they do exactly what I'm saying. They write a strategic plan for an EMS department. They put in an interim director, and they do it. They study us. They do it. They work with the staff, and then we would know. And I asked him, well, and this is just an example of one that they did for Verona, Wisconsin. This happens to be their fire department, but their EMS was somewhat integrated, so he looked at both. But I said, well, how long does one of these, opinions take to write? Well, we could probably have one done in six weeks or so, 6 to 2 months, 6 weeks, 2 months, to really come in and give firm numbers. And I would be so much more comfortable with someone who's got a PhD behind their name and years of EMS experience and city management to look at our department and write that strategic plan rather than what we've done.
So you're talking about a study?
I wouldn't say this is a study. I'm saying it's an interim director. Mm-hmm.
I don't know that the question was answered, and I want to know the answer to this too. You had mentioned that, and the question, of course, is where are we going to cut going forward in the future? So you talk about all the other money, higher percentages being spent in the different departments, and of course, what is it, 70% of our budget is personnel? Is that right, Devin? 70% of the budget's personnel. All right, I would argue that we're thin pretty much throughout every single department, and so I'd like to know where we're going to cut. You had referenced, Sarah, that we might be able to count on additional people moving in, additional housing. I think you're all aware that our levy maximum, our levy limit increases only by the value of new construction in the city, and that has been projected. I think last year it was like 1.75%, and the projections that we had in the past that were provided to us for Brenda going into the future, taking into consideration Carmichael Ridge as well as some of the other annexations, was still around that 1.7 2% maximum, and that would pay for pretty much just any type of wage and salary increases that we have been with our history at between 2 and 3% increases per year. It's already pretty much taken up. So where would you cut?
Okay, well, if we have to cut, which I'm still, which we know there are still possibilities that we might not have to based on where things come. You don't have the magic ball either. But if we do, where's my sheet of paper that lists, I just read it to y'all. Oh, this one here. So police, 3.4 million, public works, 1.7, fire, 822, parks, 457. So it goes on, library clerk, the treasurer, and community development. So if we're looking at needing $200,000, let's just ration it out evenly across all of them, all of the rest of our departments. We're not looking at that much money. It's not.
So the rest of the departments are going to not take wage salary increases and
It
or
wouldn't be wage.
Then they're
like
gonna
we
cut.
said, we have. But I'm just throwing that out there as an idea. What I really like to see is the parallel track, not blowing up our negotiating deck of cards, because that's what we're doing. If we say today we're absolutely taking that deal under door number 1, we will lose all of our skills and all of our tools to be able to negotiate teeth into that contract. During the process of writing a good, solid strategic plan, a solid strategic plan that, done by an expert who's run city EMS departments, who, the father of city management, let's let him take a stab at it. And we come up with it, and then we know the number, and then I'll show you. I'll say
we're going to spend money on a consultant. All right, so one of the things
to save the money, it would be an investment to save our negotiating tools.
Hang on one second on that thought. It's my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, Bill, but the way I understood the motion is to enter into contract negotiations with Lakeview, not to go with Lakeview, but to enter into contract negotiations, which would mean to me that a contract would come back to the council, and the council has the ability to, at that point, either accept or reject the contract. So yeah, we still have teeth. We still have a hand here that we can play, and we haven't lost control of anything. We have the ability to negotiate with another group, and if we don't like the contract, we don't accept it.
I think
am I wrong on that, Bill?
No,
Is that
absolutely.
I think there's a real downside to that, though. The minute we enter into this negotiations, St. Croix EMS is going to implode. We will lose any faith, trust that they have in us. They've hung with us. I mean, you have to look at the records of what's been done the last 3 months in terms of having staff there. It's been good, and under these conditions, I think it's fabulous, given the lack of well, just call it. It's not lack of faith. It's the confusion that we've been operating under for the last 2 years, 3 years. I think it's fabulous we've been able to maintain what we've done. So as soon as we enter the negotiations, we've lost all of that. We have a real risk of losing that. And then talk about service issues. I start to get really concerned about what's going to happen. Not, they're just going to say, I got to go somewhere else. I can't survive here. This is not a viable option for me. This is definitely going to be a second job for me. But I'd like to follow up on that referendum that you mentioned, Bill. At the last meeting, we had a discussion about the conditions for a referendum. Did you get any further clarification on that, Devin?
Essentially, you can only go for a levy override when you're at your levy limits. So, for example, so we still have what's been referred to as a levy limit cushion, which is levy limit money we haven't spent in years past because the council has made a decision to not tax to the max at the levy limit. Once you create a budget, including all of your departments, that would go beyond that levy limit. I mean, you would use when all of the cushion is gone and you were saying, okay, we don't have enough money to do this, then you could go out for a levy override. You have to specifically say what it's for, how many years it's going to be, what the costs are going to be. I mean, obviously there are estimates, but you have to delineate exactly what it's going to be spent on. And, you know, you don't want to necessarily do one in 2021 for, let's say, EMS, and then do another one in 2025, because the fire department it's been made a determination the fire department needs to go full-time, or you have, you know, which will be whatever it'll be, or some other department or some other need that develops in the city. So it would take some, I guess what I'm saying is if you're going to do it, you probably want to do it with a long-range plan of not just EMS or whatever other services you can provide, but for everything. Do we want more police officers in 2021 and 2023? You know, do we need the snowplows and all the other things that come into it? But you can't go for a levy override until you don't have the money. I mean, until you're essentially that cushion is gone. And
So in terms of timing, we would have to hit our levy limit this fall.
right. I
Starting
mean,
first
so
of the
you
year.
would. I don't have the exact number. I want to say there's at least, I think, about 300,000, because I think when the finance committee was looking at it, the original proposal budget was about 100,000 would have been left in the cushion, and I think the department heads came back with like $200,000 in cuts. So to add 300,000 to the 2020 budget plus whatever the levy limit actually is for next year, you would have to. That's how much the budget would have to increase by. Which, I mean, I guess I can't tell you couldn't do that, but that would be, so more than likely, you're probably looking at 2020. Yeah. And the other factor that plays into it is that when you receive your levy limit numbers in August, saying this is what your levy limit's going to be, you've got till the end of August to have a resolution ready to go because it has to be done then in a November election. You can't do a levy override in April or February or August, because you have to have that number, and that doesn't come out till August in order to do it. So really, November is really the only time you can do it.
November of?
Well, it can be any year, but what I'm saying is that I wouldn't anticipate that. I guess I don't know that.
It's too short of a time period.
It's too short of a time. For 2019, you would have to probably spend $470,000 more in your budget than you did. And I guess I can't tell you can't or wouldn't do that, but that would be unusual, because usually our increases aren't that much. So to answer your question, you're probably looking at 2020.
Right.
If you use your cushion and your levy limit numbers don't allow you to do the things you want to do. But they have to be in November.
Anybody else?
Devin, do I recall right that a portion of our current capital, or maybe was it for the fire department, our capital plan, we took it out of the general fund so that we didn't have to bond for so much?
There's general fund surplus, which is undesignated money, savings, if you will, from past years.
Okay.
As a general rule, you do not, if there's a one-year thing where you take $100,000 or $200,000 out of that undesignated, you can get away, but you can't. The bonding people, or the people that set our bond rating, if you start using your undesignated surplus for operations, they will downgrade you. If you're doing it for a thing, a building or something that's a structure that they are comfortable with, depending on how much you spend.
Something long-term.
Something long-term, but for operational, the general rule is you don't want to be taking your undesignated surplus year after year after year.
Have we ever taken it year after year after year?
We did. One year, I believe, we took 100 and some thousand out since I've been here. I don't think we've done it once. I think it might even be before you were here, Randy. 1 year, and then there has been a couple times we have a health insurance reserve that we set money aside in case we have. I think it was for the 2018 budget. We took like 60,000 out of that to adjust for the slight increase. But as a general rule, we have not taken money from our undesignated surplus and used it for operations, because it impacts our bond rating.
So I'm going to suggest that it's not a study, that it would be actually engaging an outside company to come in and flush out everything that our department would need to be able to stand up to our vision, which is drafted by Bill, of what a department should look like, so that we can, at the end of that contract negotiation, actually have two solid choices. Because the road that we're on right now, yeah, we're going to start contract negotiations, great. But if we don't do anything to come out at the other side with something that we can say, yep, we're going to go with this, or yep, we're going to go with that, and they're both not optional, but they're both possible. That's not the right word, but they're both able to be implemented. See what I'm saying?
Options.
Yes, they're both
Viable?
viable. This is the word, yes. They're both viable options. And then it's a fair vote of which are we going to go with. As far as the finances of it, I think we would charge that person the same, charge that person to, not charge, but charge them with that duty of helping us figure out that finances. So we would know definitively, do we have to go to referendum to finance this or not? But then we actually know, Right now, we still are in a, let's go negotiate with Lakeview, and if we don't carry on a path of doing anything with our current mission and vision, which we got an email today from one of our nurse, our EMTs that happens to be a nurse full-time. So sometimes their second job is not, bussing tables. It's actually in the medical industry. And she pointed out in an email to us that most of the time that is the case, that their full-time jobs are medically related. And I think that we had painted a picture that maybe these jobs, their full-time jobs were in some other industry, but that's not the case. But anyway, she had also pointed out that our department doesn't really have a clear mission and vision. And so as part of that, that recruiting of an interim director, that we could, and an interim would be, it has a start date and an end date. It doesn't need to be an interim until we hire, but it could actually be someone that is hired to do this specific task, to write a vision, write a mission, tell us exactly what this would take, and then we can decide if we're at the end game, when it comes time that the Lakeview contracts come back, that we actually have two viable options to consider, not just one.
Point of information, Mr. Chair.
Yes, yeah.
We are off the topic of the motion and the floor.
Yeah, I like giving people a little leeway, but I agree with you. We've got a motion right now. Everybody's got their speeches ready to go. So, any other comments?
I'd like to ask you to withdraw the motion and to revise it to include what Sarah's got.
I'm not going to amend it.
Any other comments?
Sarah, what is the cost of this study? Do you have a ballpark figure on?
We've got a motion on the floor, Jim. So.
Actually, I think this is germane because we're really talking about what the other choices are. So if you shut us down, you shut us down.
Go ahead.
We've been talking about this for a long time.
Exactly, we have. We've been talking about it for an awful long time.
We made a lot of mistakes along the way with the choices that we made as far as giving our own department any direction, guidance, or support they needed to be able to do a good job and write a thorough proposal that actually implemented our vision and mission, which we don't even have one. So it is what it is. He said that that they would do they would have to take a look at it, and similarly to how they put together a proposal for us to consider for the city administrator job, he would get us a separate proposal. But I would imagine that it's going to be in that same ballpark, same amount of time involvement.
What ballpark?
Well, isn't it what, 12 grand or something for your job?
10 to 12.
I would think it'd be significantly more than that.
Yeah, I would expect it would be too, but we just.
I actually did not ask. I did not ask.
Because you're going to have having a person working physically here, so there's going to be some increased cost
yes,
there.
I'm sorry.
On the other hand, we just spent $16,000 for a car to track parking violations.
Yes, we did.
Yeah, that's going to be paid for though by the new system. So.
Right, but that's.
There's revenue coming in to pay for that.
Jim, do you have any thoughts? Prepared thoughts?
I think there are a number of issues with both directions. I like the idea of having a professional person spending significant time here, not necessarily changing our operation, although there would be some of that. And as you discover things, you say, you gotta stop doing that right now, or start doing this right now. But to have that proposal that we would be, I think, unless it was very clear cut, that we would end up taking to the voters. Here's your option for Lakeview, and this is what it's going to be, and hopefully we would have a better feel for the cost of Lakeview in terms of what the end user is going to pay, because that's what we're doing, is we're shifting everything to the end user. And it's a little bit difficult to imagine that a operation that pays higher salaries than we do is going to cost less. So I just don't think the economics are there to prove that.
You know, Jim, it's proven. They've got a model that works. This isn't something that's different for us. So it's one thing to say I can demonstrate where they cannot do that. It's a whole different ballgame to say I just don't believe they can do it, and it doesn't make sense to me.
Mr. Mayor,
they've demonstrated they can do that.
If I may interject, I'm sorry. I hear what you're saying, and I completely 100% agree with you when you're talking about privatized EMS. This is hospital-based EMS, which is a customer of theirs, it's a client of theirs, it's a patient of theirs, that have a lot more, I'm sure, a lot more economics behind it than the bus ride to the hospital. I agree with you, again, 100%, if you're talking privatized, where they're only in the business of trying to make that, try to hit the black, not get in the red with income.
May I speak to that? And I tried last time to speak to that. I don't know. I couldn't get my words out. So what I'd like to say is, I worked for a for-profit division of a hospital in the early 90s, of a department that broke off from a hospital because we determined it was not paying for itself because it had paying customers, and so we turned that arm of the hospital into a for-profit. What is to say that Health Partners doesn't decide, hey, we no longer want our EMS to be just hospital-based. We want it to be a for-profit center. That is a possibility. That is a corporation that makes their own decisions. Things happen. Life changes, our circumstances change. So while we are considering Lakeview EMS because they are hospital-based, because they can afford to do things at a loss, because they're bringing really valuable customers to very expensive places, hospitals, and that's why they can afford to not maybe make money. That's why, but the $38 bill that we just heard about this morning, it's hard to say. So additionally, so it could in the future down the road be privatized. We don't know. It could become not hospital based. We don't know. So, end.
Can I ask about that $3,800 bill? Do you have the actual copy of it?
No, but we were told that Josh might be able to get it.
It's anecdotal anyway. I'm sure that, there are probably bills that are even more than that, but that's anecdotal. You've seen the documentation here about their costs, their rundown from BLS to ALS 2 on down the line. They are either in line or cheaper than ours all the way down the line, especially when you factor in an 8% increase at the end user on an annual basis. So are there anomalies? Absolutely. But the evidence is there. It's also their pricing is online. It's not just information that they've given to us that you may not believe. It's online. They put their pricing out there. So yeah, I'm sure you have something anecdotal, and we could all come in with something else anecdotal, but their pricing is out there. It's evident, and they've provided it to us. Jim, I think you got interrupted.
Yeah, I think there's still a couple of issues that have not been resolved and they've been mentioned. And one is the dispatch time, and what I know that is not an easy solution. There is not a $100,000 solution to that that's going to bring us up to Alina levels.
And you know that how?
That's from my discussions with Steve Katash.
Well, all right, so obviously we have two different answers on that, because Alina, who knows our system very well, has said that they can do it for $100,000.
And Steve has said that, and I think I have a specific email on that there are legal issues with that system.
I think that has to do with the
What
shared information with the police department and things like that. Yeah,
Exactly.
and
So
the way
that would have to be resolved. Right now, that's a roadblock. So there are we don't know that that's going to work. But we do know that pagers would work in terms of direct communications, and that's what we would have to move to. And it's a burden on Lakeview. It's a different operating system when they're operating here. The other piece is that is probably the thing that's always been disconcerting for me is the dynamic deployment model, which we don't do here. Our ambulances are here; they serve us, and with some calls to on mutual aid. And the other model, they will be part of the dynamic system that Lakeview uses. And it will help their system, I'm certain, but I'm not certain that I do not believe we will have the same number of ambulances here available, the same number of hours of people. I just don't see how that's going to happen, because we're going to be deployed. That's a fact that, you know, they have 3 ambulances for 7,000 patients right now, and we're going to add. We'll have 2 ambulances here for 2,000. Well, not patients, calls, for 2,000 calls. Those ambulances are going to get shifted. It would just the system would require that.
It's my understanding that so far this year there have been more ambulances coming from the current system for Lakeview over to help in the town of Hudson than vice versa.
Say it again.
I said it's my understanding that so far this year there have been more ambulances coming across the river to help the town of Hudson than our ambulance going the other way, or their ambulance going the other way. So your point was that you thought that our resources would probably spend more time over there. It hasn't been that way so far in the town of Hudson. They've actually committed more resources from over there to the town of Hudson than they have used from the town of Hudson to go across the border.
That's really amazing considering the relatively low number of calls.
Well,
you know,
those are the numbers.
Well, something doesn't make sense there, because there are not that many calls to the town of Hudson.
Okay.
I can tell you what it was for 3 months. You know, I've done.
Well, it probably has to do with transfers too.
Right. 600 cases a year.
So, well, but they're committing the resources from across the border for whatever purpose they're coming across.
And that makes financial sense to them. That the town of Hudson operation doesn't work without the transfers.
Anybody else?
Yeah, if I can get the
Sure.
mic here a minute.
Just 1 second. Ramsey, you're trying to say something? We're going to get you a mic here, Ramsey. Just 1 second. Okay.
Is now a good time to talk about EMS?
Yes.
Okay. So, first of all, I agree with Sarah that we need to get proposal from both so that we know what we're comparing. You know, if there is difficulties with the communication system and right time, I'm not comfortable with going with Lakeview until we have a concrete solution to that. And this is such an important issue. And you all have done such incredible job that I think we should give it to the voters, because without the public knowing what's going on, I'm not comfortable going with Lakeview. If I had two concrete proposals, then I would be. But let's give those two concrete proposals before we make any decisions here. And I think the public should be involved and get that consulting firm, so we have a variety of perspectives so we can compare apples to apples. Thank you.
Thanks, Ramsey. Paul?
Thank you. So, first of all, I want to thank both Lakeview and St. Croix EMS for their RFPs and for your desire to serve the city and the people of Hudson. I have a great respect for both services, and the decision to choose between them is not simple, and it's not a decision I've taken lightly. I've asked difficult questions to both services in this process, and I thank both services for their patience as we've gone along. In addition, I've sought out my constituents, experts in the area, and tried to specifically go after people who think differently than myself, because I was really trying to enter in this process with as open a mind as possible. So my decision tonight on the motion is going to be based on 19 criteria that I've been weighing over the last few months. I won't get into all the details of those criteria for purposes of time, but they are as follows: the number of ambulances available, the education and medical training of employees, the run times, where ambulances are stationed, the deployment models, the dispatch, who controls the service, the cost to taxpayers, the cost to the users, financial resources for uninsured and low-income people, sustainability, staffing for ambulances, training for first responders, liability to the city, financial resources for adding more ambulances in the future, the use of mutual aid, employee pay and career advancement, and technology, specifically I'm thinking of CADs with that, And then history and track record in the town of Hudson. So as I have reviewed the original RFPs and the subsequent information that we have been given over the course of the past 4 months, I conclude that the two services before us tonight are roughly even in 3 of these 19 areas. And I would judge those to be run times, cost to users, and use of mutual aid for backup. The cost of the user piece is mostly due to the fact that insurance is going to be paying the brunt of this. If someone gets picked up by an ambulance and goes to an emergency room, pretty much whatever your deductible is, you're going to be paying it. So I want to focus on run times. I used the run times from 2017 and 2018 that were provided for us from St. Croix EMS for the city of Hudson only. And then I looked at Lakeview's times, in 2017 and 2018 that we were given for the same area, which is the city of Stillwater. Sorry, not the same area, but city of Stillwater, city of Hudson. And the reason I'm doing that is I think that's the closest apples to apples comparison. Hudson is 7.4 square miles. Stillwater is 9 square miles. Both ambulances are based inside the city, so I think it's comparing apples to apples. So the bottom line is both have excellent run times. St. Croix EMS, 5 to 6 minute average. Lakeview during the same period, 5.3 minutes. We're doing well. I don't see an advantage to either service for runtime. I've also looked at them for Town of Hudson since January 1st compared to what we used to do prior to that, and I don't see a big discrepancy there. So I think with all the debate about runtimes, I'm okay with either service with runtimes. My analysis further shows that St. Croix EMS is clearly better in 4 of the criteria areas, which would be local or publicly controlled, communication with St. Croix County Dispatch, the deployment model being static in the city, and the history or track record in town. They've been here for 42 years, which I think is important. So I would say in those 4 areas, many of which are very important areas, I think St. Croix EMS clearly is superior. On the flip side, I think Lakeview is better in 12 areas, and those would be the number of ambulances, 2, education and training of employees, which would be the 2 paramedics on each rig, the fact that they would like to build their own station at the Hudson Hospital with the 4 bays, so they're thinking long-term future, the cost to taxpayers, which under the RFP is 0 for the town of Hudson, the financial aid to uninsured and low-income people, which is 58% for uninsured, and then it's kind of spelled out by what you make, 100% of poverty, 150, 200, so on. I don't have all the stats on that before me. Sustainability is a big thing, and I think that Lakeview RFP is just more sustainable. Full staffing of ambulances, and what I mean by that is 100% of the time, from what we've heard from Lakeview, they're staffed. 91% of the time from the data we have in the last couple months is what we're staffed. Again, both good, but I think the edge to Lakeview on that one. Liability to the city, I think, would lean in Lakeview's favor. Training and using their licensing for first responders, I would give to Lakeview. Financial resources for adding more ambulances in the future. Clearly, I think Lakeview has deeper pockets than the city. So I think that we need to think about that. Employee pay, which is higher, and benefits, and the fact that Lakeview, they have career people. They have folks that, in the last meeting we learned that stay there for years. Our system has some long-term people, but we tend to, because of the lower pay, they tend to cycle out quicker. I also believe this is really important, you guys. We need to consider the bigger picture. Some things that are heavily impacting sustainability in keeping our local ambulance service in the future are things that have really changed since 2017 when Lakeview was first being considered by the council. And I also want to be quick to point out that I think none of these bigger picture items reflect poorly on St. Croix EMS, because honestly, St. Croix EMS has nothing to do with these issues. So the first one is this. Our partner cities, they don't want to support St. Croix EMS. The town of Hudson asked for and was granted an early exit in their 5-year rolling contract with by the council last fall, and I was a part of that decision. The village of North Hudson followed with a similar request. And I'm not quite sure where the town of Troy is, because based on the ad hoc committee meetings, they had 2 reps, and I'm not sure. But I don't know in the long-term future if the town of Troy would be wanting to do that same thing in terms of pulling out. So I'm just not sure it's realistic to sustain our local service when our partner communities are not vested in supporting it. It makes me quite nervous. Number 2, losing those runs in the town of Hudson on January 1st, and then the transfers from the hospital that started, that began on January 1st, make it very, very difficult to sustain our service. In the future, if North Hudson and Troy do not renew their contracts, so I believe that's 2023 if I'm right, our run volume will decline, so will our revenue. A shrinking budget and a shrinking number of ambulances, we're down to 1.5 now under the new plan, because we can't afford to fund them. And in my judgment, it's not a good way to approach public safety because we're a growing city. If we were a shrinking city, I might be okay with the 1.5, but it makes me nervous as we grow. Number 3, the state of Wisconsin levy limits. None of us had anything to do with that. The state legislature set them. It's putting pressure on us. It's putting pressure on our neighboring communities, so I understand why they are feeling stress and not wanting to, support it. But again, that's nothing to do with St. Croix EMS. Number 4, since I campaigned a year ago, and as I maintained throughout the fall, I thought that fire-based EMS was our best option in Hudson. From this article, Bill, I think you gave us fire-based EMS is the #1 option for municipalities across the country. I think it was around 40% or something. But we voted that option down. We voted that option down, and I believe in late November, early December. We voted down just the chance to look at it. And I understand it was during the process when we were working on the RFP, so I get the reasoning behind it. I don't think my timing was great in bringing it up. But I think we missed a really great opportunity for long-term sustainability. I also know that our fire chief, who was doing a great job, was not very interested. And I also think Josh, our EMS chief, was not very interested. I don't know how you can sustain a fire-based EMS if your chiefs aren't excited about it. So, and that's not to blame anyone, it's just to lay out the facts and say, that's what happened, right? And then I think point 5 would just be our healthcare system is huge, and costs are rising, and insurance rates are rising. And if we go with Lakeview, essentially we're passing on the buck to the insurance companies, and so rates will increase, right? But we're part of this bigger system that we can't control, and in some ways we can't compete with it. It's a big system, multi-million-dollar system that makes our $8 million budget, our 3% or 4% of that $8 million budget, really difficult to compete with in terms of wages and benefits and the whole lot. So I would conclude that we have to play our best card. We have to play the best card we've been dealt in the RFP process. And I think the best option at this point is to enter into contract negotiations with Lakeview. I want to say, excuse me, I take no joy. I take no joy in this decision because St. Croix EMS has done a great job for 42 years. And again, they've done nothing wrong. They're being squeezed by external factors and decisions this council has made through no fault of their own. My support to enter into contract negotiations, however, does not mean that I will vote for a contract with Lakeview, as I have 7 concerns that I would like to see addressed in a potential contract with Lakeview. I think all 7 of these are vital to protecting the citizens of Hudson. I think all 7 are reasonable requests by the city of Hudson. Number 1, I would like to see an average runtime of 6 minutes or less for the city of Hudson. I know when we asked at the last meeting, John, you talked about you thought 6 minutes was doable within the city based on what you guys do in Stillwater. Number 2, I would like to see language clarifying the definition of dedicated coverage so that ambulances are available and not dismissed at emergency events until the fire or police chief in charge of a scene releases the ambulances. I know we talked about this last meeting. It sounded like you guys were good with it. The reason I'm bringing it up is the original 27 contract did not spell that out toward the city of Hudson, and so I just want to make sure that language is clear. Number 3, I would like to see Lakeview either purchase pagers or some kind of software compatible with St. Croix County Dispatch so we can reduce the lag time between the county and the line of dispatches. And I think that has been one of your big issues, and I agree. I think if St. Croix EMS can have pagers and do it, I still don't understand why Lakeview can't do it. So I think we need to talk about that in the contract. Number 4, I would like to see the language detailing charity coverage for the uninsured and low-income discounts in the contract, and that would be the duration of the contract. I don't know, Mr. Mayor, that was a big thing you talked about last meeting. I would just like to see that spelled out in the contract so that doesn't change sometime in the next 10 years. Number 5, I would like to see benchmark numbers based on either mutual aid calls or run volumes to trigger adding additional ambulances to the Hudson area as population increases. And that's kind of what, I know, John, you spoke to that a little bit last meeting too. I don't know what those numbers are, but if we could figure that out. I just think we're a growing area. I'm not saying in 10 years we need the third, but we just got to play it out and see. Number 6, I think language clarifying how Lakeview and the city can cooperate to set up, train, and maintain a first responder program under Lakeview's license. And I know, Bill, you've talked a lot about first responders too. That, I think, is our first line of defense for safety. That, I think, is our best option for dynamic deployment situations where we might very well have an ambulance on the Minnesota side that can't get theirs quicker. And I think if we have first responders throughout the Hudson area, I know the police do it already, but I think we need to formalize that. I think that is actually our best line of defense. And then finally, and this kind of speaks to your point, I think, Sarah, number 7, I'd like to see a clause stipulating that if Lakeview is not able to perform service through the duration of the contract, that they would return ambulance acquired from the city of Hudson to the city of Hudson at no cost. And the reason I want to see that is that we'd basically be behind the 8 ball, and we would need our equipment back to start scrambling to do an ambulance service. Again, I'm not saying that would be, I'm not anticipating a failure over the 10 years. I'm trying to make sure that we're protecting our people so that we can say, hey, we've kind of got this fallback. We can get that back. We're not gonna have to put up another $1.5 million somehow in a budget we've already done. So again, this is not contract negotiations, but I do want to air this publicly. I think the voters of District 3 who gave me the seat deserve to hear it. I think the people of Hudson deserve to hear it. I think you guys deserve to hear it. So with that, I would support the motion tonight to enter into contract negotiations with Lakeview.
Anybody else?
If I may. Sorry. I know we've gone long enough probably, but I want to say that during this process there's been many times that I've reflected on the city's negotiation with Lakeview in 2017 as a comparison to our current process. Okay. One thing that I reflect on more than anything else was the process of the 2017 negotiation. When I pick it apart and I look closely at the 2017 negotiations with Lakeview and the eventual contract, what I didn't like about it wasn't Lakeview as an entity or as an EMS delivery model. What I didn't like was the process that we as a council, I was a part of that, took to arrive to our conclusion. In my opinion, we didn't have the proper optics. We didn't have a perspective of what other agencies are out there. We didn't have an open means to ask questions directly of Lakeview, whether they were questions formed by us or our constituents. We didn't hold public meetings to discuss. Obviously, we're in contract negotiations, which have to be in closed session. Again, admittedly, I was part of that process, and for that I am culpable. In this process, I have asked a lot of questions, both in meetings and through email. My questions and my constituents' questions, all responses I have received has satisfied my inquiry and then some. Another thing that I've reflected on and that I talked about in 2017 when we took that vote is ideology. In 2017, I spoke of the notion that every facet of a community's safety should be owned, operated, and delivered by the government of that community at all costs. And now I realize more than ever that the cost of healthcare delivery that I want for my family, my neighbors, and my community will only lead us to increase tax burden on a community that is now beginning to see the impact of a recent referendum. As part of my business, I have a distinct pleasure an opportunity to interview high-profile, influential leaders through video. And last summer, I interviewed one such leader of a multi-billion-dollar company. He's very active in the private sector, and his wife is equally as active in the nonprofit sector. And so I asked him for his thoughts around what makes communities work in this day and age. I wasn't asking him about EMS, obviously, but what makes communities work? And he shared with me that we as a country can no longer look to a government body, the private sector, or the nonprofit sector as solely fulfilling all of a community's needs. Instead, we as community leaders need to look at creating strategic partnerships between local governments, the nonprofit sector, and the private sector. I see this motion to enter into contract negotiation with Lakeview as the next step in creating a strategic partnership to help fulfill emergency health care to our communities and its citizens.
All right, we've got a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Show of hands. All those in favor? Those opposed? O'Connor votes aye. Motion's approved.
I make the motion that we may have a parallel process where we develop a strategic plan and look into the Public Administration Associates to work on that for us.
Second that.
So we got a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Yeah, just a friendly thought, amendment, I don't know how to say it. I like what you're saying, Sarah, that I'm not guaranteeing my vote on a Lakeview contract because I haven't seen the contract, right? So none of us have seen it. So it would make sense to move forward. I guess what I'm maybe asking for is, could we? I don't know the timing of this, and so what I'm wondering is if we could. Is there any way we could hold that for like a month or 2 weeks, or you just want to like plow forward and do it regardless of the negotiating?
I believe that at a minimum, we would need to ask Public Administration Associates to submit a proposal that utilizes one of their internal EMS experts. You know, let's see how much it costs. You know, the start of it is free to us.
I got you.
We need to know.
So they would just be putting the proposal forward,
right? Yeah, we would, and I would want at some point that we as a group, we would have to vote on bills. You know, is this what we want, or does it incorporate some of your 27 points or however many that was? A lot of
19
points. You know what I'm saying? So they would need to know what it is our vision is, and I think that's encapsulated both of those 19 points and Bill's dozen here or whatever they are.
So
right?
And I get that. What I'm trying to figure out is it like, I mean, part of me feels like, is it the RFP starting all over again?
Absolutely not. This is entirely different.
Okay.
We have a clear vision. We didn't have that before, and this is a very specific.
Okay. So it's just asking them to put forward a proposal of which we would look at later, basically. Is that
In
correct?
order to say yes to a proposal, we have to have one in front of us, but I would then ask that we strongly consider. And the point of that is, it is a final investment. I mean, we've spent so many hours and hours and hours at this. If you just consider our council time as valuable, we're going to far exceed the cost of what probably the work will be to be done. But what are we buying? We're buying the ability to, at the end of the day, have a nice solid contract with teeth in it and a viable, possibly viable, but I want to say viable based on what I get from within our department, based on what we heard from Jerry and Josh in the process improvements, that I really think that there still is a viable option. And only when you can have a viable option on both fields are we going to be able to say, I'm not going to vote for the Lakeview contract.
Right. I guess my preference, as I think about it, would be to try to come to successful negotiation with Lakeview. And if that doesn't work, then I think that would be the direction.
That
forward.
defeats the whole purpose of
I get
everything
it.
that this motion says.
Okay.
All right, we have motion and second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
No,
Nay.
One abstention.
abstentions go to the majority. Abstentions go to the minority. So I don't know how you do that. Minorities.
Well, you need a majority of the council to pass a motion.
I'm hearing two different things, so.
I don't know of in our procedures, I don't know that we have abstentions go to.
Abstentions go to the majority is what I meant.
Oh, majority. He said he's correcting himself. He's correcting himself. And I hadn't heard that before, but.
Well, I'm gonna look
Under
at
Robert's
procedures.
rules.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just gonna look at our procedures.
Sorry.
No, it's. All right, so, motion prevails. What I would ask, and I guess I probably should have asked this before the vote, why them? I'm sure there are plenty of groups out there. Why this group? I mean, you're just picking another one and just, I mean, don't we have an obligation as a city to be kind of exploring our options here? I've been hearing that all night long, that we should be exploring our options.
Well, I'm open to asking others
I
if
know
that's
that.
what you
I
want.
know.
Procurement policy.
I get that we can do it for a service, but I'm not saying.
No, I'm saying under our procurement policy, depending on how much it's estimated to be, if it's over $15,000, we do need to get proposals, not just consider one proposal.
So then that would be a modified, that would be what we would want to pursue.
Well,
Then you'll have to do it.
so, yeah, we would have to redo the vote then. But I also have another concern, and that is that in order for any type of proposal, regardless of who the group is that we would contract with, we need a finance director that can communicate with them and get the numbers to them, as well as do the projections, all those numbers that we have gotten in the past from Brenda and now Devin. But we would have somebody that would be dedicated to that. And of course, that person's going to come walking through the door here pretty soon. They got a lot to do, and all of a sudden, they're going to be saddled with this too. But anyway, I think that this process is going to take a little bit longer. And I would suggest that as you redo the motion, that we take into consideration those factors, that we would have to probably go out and do a process. It's probably going to cost more than $15,000, but you can find out. And even if it's not $15,000, more than $15,000, I would still submit that we have a fiduciary obligation as a council to make sure that we're getting the best group.
And to
all
negotiate the
we've-
best contract.
All we've heard, well, and that's about what that's what the motion was for, was to negotiate a contract. And that would obviously would have to be to the satisfaction of the council. You're just talking about entering into an agreement with a group that we've never even heard of, or I haven't heard of before until tonight. And it sounds like the only contact we've had with them was like 23 or 24 years ago. So I would suggest that process that you're talking about is flawed right now for two reasons. Number one, if it's under 15,000, that we need to be looking at all available sources and options out there. If it's more than 15,000, then we need proposals. So, and keep in mind also the work that is going to be loaded on to a new finance director. And I just don't know if that's fair at this point in time, because our last finance director was extremely burdened by this process over the course of the last year and a half. So,
well, I would put out there that based on the experience that, I got this information on Friday. I don't know you got it tonight, but on the Public Administration Associates, just looking at their website and the credentials of all the folks that they have that they can tap into, I would think that financially, to run financials, they're going to be self-sufficient, that they're not going to be taxing our finance department.
Frankly, Sarah, I'm not going to be taking any private. You've been railing against private sector here for the last couple months.
Oh, I'm not saying that we don't.
So I'm not going to take their numbers.
I'm not saying that we don't go out for proposal, but.
No, you just talked about their numbers. I'm not taking their numbers at face value. I want our finance director.
Well, of course, but they wouldn't be. I think Josh and Jerry didn't have the ability to not tap into Brenda. At least they would be bringing our finance director more, their numbers people.
All right, well, I think we need a different motion.
So the motion would be to ask, to develop an RFP to ask for outside entities that specialize in city management and have experience with EMS administration in particular to write a full-blown strategic plan that achieves our goals and vision and mission as we set forth, which will have yet to be agreed upon as a group. Does that make sense?
I'll second that.
Okay, we got a motion and a second. I'm just checking with Jen here.
Jen, I can send you something.
Thank you. Yes.
We need to know what you're voting
They
on.
need to know what they're voting on.
Yeah, I'm confused.
One question I have is what your motion entailing precluding from negotiations from beginning with Lakeview?
No.
No, it can't. That motion
Okay.
pass.
Okay.
Why I'm confused is we just passed the motion? Am I right?
We can't, yeah, but it's because of the
first
technicality
motion
with
wasn't
the.
to go out for proposal. It was to ask them to, just take a look and give us a ballpark of what it might cost.
But
Just
that
as an
motion
initial step.
passed. Am I right?
Was that the motion just to have them tell us what it would cost?
Yeah.
That was the original motion.
Oh, I thought it was more than that. But
I
again,
did say to submit a
retain them,
proposal.
I guess you need to, you need to go if it's going to cost.
All right, well,
I mean, we have a passed motion on the floor is my point.
yeah,
So-
I thought it entailed more than that. I thought we were talking about if all we're doing is asking what they're going to cost. I don't even know. Okay, that's fine. But you're talking about running a parallel project here.
Well-
By using them. That's what I thought. And if that's the case, then I think the motion was not appropriate because of the cost and the fact that we should be looking at other options as well. But if all the motion is to go out and ask what the cost is.
That's my understanding of it, right? This
That
doesn't,
wasn't
the
my
motion,
understanding.
my understanding is it doesn't cost a thing right now. They're gonna,
With all the discussion, it's hard to think it through.
Jen, what do you have as a motion?
Is the first
original
one?
The first or the second? I didn't
First
catch
one.
it. I was going to
The
listen
first
to the
one.
tape. I was going to listen to the tape.
Okay.
It was a long motion.
All right, I tell you what. Why? We don't know what the motion was.
You've pointed that out several times, thank you. I didn't know the rules on procurement, I'm sorry. Okay? Didn't know.
No.
So, if we want a few proposals to achieve what we want, then I would change my motion to say to go to RFP for proposals that utilize an interim EMS director to write a full-blown strategic plan that achieves the goals that we set out for a stable and sustainable department. So if it's going to have to be procured, it has to go out. But we only got a couple of proposals.
All right, we have a serious technical problem here right now. We have a motion that passed. We need to go back and find out what that motion was. We need to know exactly what that motion was.
What motion?
The one that we just voted on that Paul abstained on.
Okay, but there was the second motion, and it was seconded by Joyce, and so if you're going to withdraw this motion, it belongs to the council, so you need a motion to withdraw that motion.
We need to know.
And then go back and then amend something previously adopted, and then you'd have to vote on that one.
Yeah.
Can I suggest we take a recess, a break right now, and talk to the tech people and go back and see what the motion was during the break, and then we can pick up from there.
Can we do that?
Yes.
Can we do that?
I believe so.
Take a
Yeah.
break.
And don't they have a tape?
I don't know what they can do technically.
Yeah, we can ask them and see.
Tape.
Yeah, I don't know if they can produce.
Do they
that.
continue
I just don't know, so
filming
it's
while we're
worth
on
finding
break?
out.
No, I think they usually stop when we're
I'm
on break.
voting.
Go back and look at it. That's my point.
Ask Braden what he can do.
Yeah.
Also, I think we should just take a break. Motion.
We got a long night ahead of us yet.
That's what I'm saying.
Where does the majority, does the abstention go to the majority?
No, that's,
then we know
it
what we
doesn't,
got.
our procedures
Then we
say
know
a
if we need to do
majority
our
vote of
review
those
or-
present.
Which that's what the
3-2 was the majority.
But we are governed by Robert's rules.
Yes.
Well, but you can have your own local rules, and some of our rules are different than Robert's
Chair
rules.
can declare,
And then if it turns out that it's going to be more than that, then we'd have to go.
So,
the
So there's a
Say it
motion.
goes to the majority.
Then become a fight.
It ends up being the same.
Are we on break?
so he would.
Oh, that's not what.
We're back after break, and we had a number of Robert's Rules discussions. The first thing that we would like to do, if possible, and we can revisit this, Sarah, but if you would withdraw your most recent motion.
Yes, so I would move to withdraw the most recent motion.
Well, really, what it's already.
That's on the floor.
Oh, the most recent motion that has now
Yeah.
been voted. Okay.
Okay.
That was my motion.
Yep. And
So-
Joyce.
I'll withdraw my second.
Okay.
Or no,
Bill, still.
you're not withdrawing yet. Oh, yes, you are.
Yes, it was Joyce
Talking
that
about your
seconded.
second motion.
Yes.
All right, so that motion is withdrawn. It is no longer on the table, okay? And now we go back to the motion for the vote in which Paul abstained.
The original motion was to have a parallel process and develop a strategic plan and look into public administration associates to work on it for us. That was the original motion. There was a bunch of other conversation, but there were no amendments to that motion. You know, I mean, there was discussion about what that meant, but that was the original motion. So that's what was voted on.
Kathy?
So that motion, in my opinion, is void because it can't be implemented. It can't be implemented because it's not consistent with our procurement policy. So it's just null and void. So it has no effect.
Does the motion have to be withdrawn then, or?
No, it was acted on, but it was out of order to the extent that it's something that the council cannot, or staff cannot implement because it's
So
inconsistent.
may I make a motion now that is more consistent with what it should be?
That's up to the chair.
Well, yeah.
Okay, I'm going to move that we finalize a list of criteria that a strategic plan would have to meet, and that we send out RFP to interested organizations that would be able to write a full-blown strategic plan that would achieve our list of criteria and possibly be done using an interim director appointed from within that organization's resources, depending on what they would come back and with their proposal.
I'll second that.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Does everybody understand the motion?
The only point I would make is it doesn't say St. Croix EMS in there anywhere. I'll show it somewhere.
Yes.
The strategic plan for St. Croix EMS.
Yes. Okay, yes.
May I ask a question?
Do you have that written down already that you can just pass along?
I do not.
So what I have is finalize a list.
Finalize a list of criteria.
For a strategic plan for St. Croix EMS that we would send out to interested organizations for a proposal that would achieve the list of criteria and possibly done with an interim director from within their resources. That's what I have written down.
Okay.
Is that close?
Yes.
May I ask a question? So the interim that you refer to, are you talking, that is not, what you're not suggesting is a hire by the city of an interim director internally. You're talking about utilizing potentially advice of an interim director within this organization.
Correct.
Is that correct?
Yeah, that they
I just
would.
wanted to.
Yeah.
That whatever group is doing the proposal could potentially have an interim person.
In their plan.
In the plan. Okay.
Wow, now I'm confused.
So, sir, is there any like cost in this for the city? Like, explain how does this work?
It would require that we review the proposals, much like we are reviewing the proposals that came in for recruiting for our city administrator position. So going out for a proposal doesn't necessarily cost any money. That's they submit proposals to us, we review them, and then we would decide whether or not we were going to adopt it, to move with one of them or not, or move with none of them. But at least we'd know how much we'd be looking at.
Okay.
It answers a how much does it cost question. Had we known that there were companies out there that specialized in city management and in particular had skills and resources with EMS back in October, we would have probably, instead of going with the company that we did, we would have been able to go with a company that has expertise in our particular area of need. And I'd just like to send this RFP out for informational purposes at first, because it would be the first step that we would need to operate a parallel track to know where our end game is in our keeping our own public service with St. Croix EMS.
I'd just like to interject. This is the worst concept, I think, ever, because you guys didn't like the outcome of that last vote, which was done duly and democratically. And now you guys are going to try to muddy up the waters for more time, potentially more money. And it does not make sense to me. I mean, to me, you heard, we need to move on. We make a decision and we move on. You guys don't like the outcome, so you're coming up with this proposal. To do what?
It's not stopping contract negotiations with Lakeview. It's strengthening our hand at the negotiating table in that process.
Well, I completely disagree with you guys trying to do what you're doing.
I don't see it how it strengthens our hand, frankly, and just by virtue of the fact that we're talking about it means that we could bring it up at any time. Lakeview's here, they hear what we're talking about. I agree with Randy. I think this is muddying the water. And you know what really disturbs me more than anything about this motion is that where was this motion a year ago? Where was this motion 2 years ago? Where was this motion when we had an ad hoc committee that was spending all their time trying to figure out how to make this thing sustainable? And now, right after we have a vote that has already been accomplished, already done, already on the books, all of a sudden here comes this suggestion that if it's worthwhile, should have been brought up a long, long time ago.
I couldn't agree with you more, Mr. Mayor. However, our city should have, in our organization, the people at this very table were the ones who were supposed to bring it up. You didn't.
Absolutely.
And neither did our city administrator, and neither did city council. We never said.
We had an ad hoc committee meeting that was in charge of that. We put that ad hoc committee meeting in charge of that as soon as that last vote was taken, Sarah. So you don't lay that on the administrator. Don't lay that on me. The ad hoc committee was supposed to be set up in order to review those types of things, and they came back with, we need a consultant.
Which is kind of what Sarah just said.
And we went to look for a consultant, but we got a consultant that doesn't specialize in what we needed it to specialize in. It's the buck stops with this table. And it was all of our responsibility to find the right company, to do the right job. It's hindsight now, but.
All right, we got a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
I just want to add, I mean, in fairness and full disclosure, these types of RFPs are not easy to put together, and I do know for the EMS RFP, there was a fair amount of my time incurred by the city on putting together the request for proposals. So just in terms of cost, there's that.
I guess my preference would be to negotiate with Lakeview. And if the contract comes back and we don't feel comfortable with it, and some of the things we talked about haven't been remedied, then I think we would do what you're talking about. But I see it a little bit in terms of a timing issue. The more I think about it, let's negotiate in good faith, and let's extend good faith to Lakeview, since they have the potential for being our partner. And I think let's see what happens with that in good faith. And if that doesn't work out, then I think we do exactly, then I think you get the blueprint to move forward, so. But I think it's a little bit difficult and probably confusing for the public too, to have both things going on, although I think your point is well taken. I understand it with the negotiation piece, but I guess I want to say let's try to extend some good faith.
All right, we got a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
No.
Nay.
All right, motion is not approved.
4-2, right?
4-2.
You voted no, right?
Yeah. Okay. All right, man. Where's the agenda?
Can I bring up something else
Yes,
with
go ahead,
EMS?
Paul.
It's related.
No. No more motions.
It might not be a motion, but I think it's really, really important for us. I'm really concerned that we treat all the employees of St. Croix EMS with respect and dignity. And I think, depending upon, again, we don't know what the outcome of the negotiations is going to be, but I think we need to start thinking about either, I don't know if you call it a severance package, retention bonus. I know Joanne Kinney's been there for 22 years. I know some of those employees have been there for years. If we get a contract that we feel comfortable with, we need to be out in front of this thing, and we need to say, what are we going to do for those folks to show them the gratitude for saving lives for all these years? And there are people, there are employees. So I'm not about to move on without saying, we're not going to leave them high and dry. So I don't know right now how to make that motion, if you're ready for that. I don't know if we defer that to the law team and the labor people to figure out what that is.
Yeah, it's not on the agenda.
You can,
But it's related, is what I'm saying. If we're talking about,
If I can interject, we did do that back in
Yes.
2017 when the negotiations were going on. So we do have a blueprint for what that would look like.
yep, and the feedback I've gotten from some employees that it has to be a whole lot better than the one that was offered 2 years ago. So I'm talking about a serious, bonus, retention bonus. And so I don't have a motion, I don't have facts and figures. I'm just saying we need to send a very clear signal that we're taking care of our folks if we go another direction.
You know what? I agree with you 100%, Paul. I was all in favor of, and I don't know that I could take credit for the idea, but I certainly supported it 100% for the type of bonus. I can't say this enough. I say this every time I have an opportunity. I think our guys are very professional. They do a great job. Over the course of the past year in particular, they've been under a lot of strain, a lot of pressure, and have done a Herculean job, I think, in maintaining the dignity of the program throughout a lot of adversity. And I couldn't agree with you more. We need to make sure that we show a good demonstration of good faith to our very dedicated, committed people that have served our community well for a long, long time. So I agree with you 100%. Unfortunately, it's not on the agenda.
No, I'm saying in the future. I'm just saying for us to think about.
Yeah.
I'm not entertaining a motion. I'm just saying.
I will pull the information from last time and we'll check with the labor
With
attorney and see
Steve.
what,
Yep.
so that we have something
Thank
available
you.
for you.
Yep.
Okay. Discussion and possible action on selection of recruitment firm for the city administrator position.
The Finance Committee earlier this evening made a motion to hire Public Administration Associates LLC to conduct the city administrator search at a cost not to exceed $12,000, which would give a little bit of a cushion beyond what they had in their contract.
Do we have a motion?
I'll move to approve.
Second.
Issue?
I don't want a second, no.
So, I'll second.
Motion and second.
I seconded it.
Discussion?
I think in reading through the proposals, I think the most important piece of that came about maybe a quarter of the way into their discussion, is that they're going to sit down with us and help us figure out what we want. And Devin has made that point several times, is that just exactly what do we need in a city administrator, city manager, whatever you want to call it. But I think that's a really important piece, and I'm looking forward to working with them on that.
Okay, good. I agree. Further discussion?
Well, not to throw us into another long conversation about something else, another long conversation. But I guess I want to say, in looking at that company's website, that they also do organizational and governance reviews. So, like right now, we've been doing the things we've been doing for a very long time, the way we've been doing them. And since I stepped into this role on City Council, I've been hearing from not only staff, but also people who have their thumb on the pulse of the city and the downtown area. People that pay attention and watch these wonderful tapes on YouTube. That an overhaul of, or at least taking this as an opportunity to look at our governance structure. We have a very top-down, the mayor runs, is the way I see it anyway, we have a structure that reports to the very top, not reports, but our tasks and directions are from the top versus having a very, a different type of city administrator job description where a lot of the department, everything that's happening within the city, the buck stops there, and there's more empowerment at the city administrator level, and the mayor becomes more of a face forward, and the city council to looking forward to the directions that we want to see the city go. I think that if we wanted to take a step back and have them start out with that organizational review, like I said, I've heard from people within our organization that would like to have more input than I think is in an interview process. That, in other words, taking a step back and more clearly defining exactly what it is we're looking for. I know they've included part of this in there, but we haven't looked at, an overall organizational and governance review in quite some time.
I got that.
Okay.
It's not on the agenda.
It would precede the ability to hire
Well, right now we're talking about, and it's the same company, right?
It is.
So right now, the only thing we're talking about is hiring the company that was recommended from Finance Committee, and if you want to, and for a very specific purpose, if you want to add to that purpose in subsequent meetings or even in the discussions if and when, presuming that we vote positively for this company, then we can either add it to the agenda or add it to the conversation we have with them. But right now, it's not on the agenda. But I hear what you're saying. I don't think that's a bad thing. We did that. We brought a consulting group into the library, and I thought it was very effective. It was timely and necessary, and I think it's worked very well. All right. So, on the motion, buddy, we do have a motion and a second, right?
Yep. Yes.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Motion's approved. Discussion and possible action on Resolution 10-19, resolution awarding the sale of general obligation corporate purpose bonds, Series 2019A. And I don't know if you've had an opportunity to take advantage of our hotels here yet, Sean. But
They're full.
It's a good thing. All right, I know you guys have had a long meeting. I think I've got some good news for you, though, definitely on these bond sales today. I'm going to hand out the two reports. And Devin, you might have already circulated these electronically, or
No.
You did not? Okay, perfect. I'm glad I made these copies. As they're going around, just briefly, backdrop to what we're going to talk about. About a month ago, I was at the meeting where we approved the finance plan for two issues this year. The Series A, which I'll talk about first, was a bond issue for the fire station primarily, but also for street improvements for 2019 and 2020. That's a 20-year repayment issue. The second issue that we talked about a month ago was a note issue, and that's primarily equipment, vehicles, and other little bit shorter useful life assets that the city will be doing over the next 2 years, 19 and 20. So both of those issues were put out to market today. Where I'd like to start on the $5,960,000 Geo Corporate Purpose Bonds of 19A is with the rating report. And as we've discussed in past years when the city's issued debt, is you have carried a bond rating of AA2 for a number of years now. The mayor, Devin, and Mike and I had about an hour and 15-minute conversation with Moody's Investor Service. The conversation went very well. The city always does a really good job of preparing for the questions that they're going to ask and getting the material ready. They came back to us at the end of last week saying that they have affirmed the AA2 rating, saying that we're still at that rating. The report here highlights the results of their assessment of the city and why they have it at the AA2 rating. As we've talked about before, what is it that would take us to the AA1? I think the biggest factor, if you look at the cover page here of their report, a couple pages into what I handed out, factors that could lead to an upgrade: substantial appreciation in tax base. And my sense of the discussion with them is that's still the biggest factor that is holding us from going up to that next rating. And it would be good to get up there. It's probably somewhere in the 5 to 10 basis points. So it's not a huge improvement in interest rates, but you always like to get the best you can. But where I wanted to relay this to the council is that isn't something that you folks have a direct control over. I mean, you certainly are entering into activity to promote development and redevelopment in the city, which promotes tax base expansion. But they just have these thresholds that this is the group that we believe are in the AA1 level. And currently they see our current total value being below that level. And so I really think that's the primary factor, because I don't know if Devin and Mayor, if you'd agree, but when they talked about our finances and everything else, it was pretty much all positive. And Mike talked about the many varying economic development activities that you've got going on. That's all good news. So again, still you have a very strong rating report and a rating at that AA2 level. So with that, that rating affirmed, we went out for bids this morning. And if you go a couple pages back, you will see the bid tabulation for the $5,960,000 bond issue. The city received 4 bids, and you'll see we got bids from a couple from Minnesota, one from Tennessee. Strong rating does help get bids from all over the country, and one from Milwaukee as well. The winning bid was at 2.75% blended interest rate. And I think, as I've mentioned to the council before, when we get these bids, the true interest rate, which is how we compare, is a combination of the price that they're going to pay us and the interest rates that they're asking us to pay them back on the debt. You may say, well, the interest rates I'm seeing here are all at 3%. But our true interest rate is 2.75. Why is that? They're paying us more money than we're asking them for. And so what we're doing is we're taking that money and we're using it to pay the debt back faster. So that's what we end up doing with it. But you'll also notice the bids are very, very competitive here, ranging from 2.75% to 2.81. So very competitive bidding on this issue. Other piece of good news on the back page, I had a pre-sale report for you about a month ago, and if you look in the middle of the page where it says interest rates, the pre-sale, we were looking at interest rates at about 3.6%. We had a little bit of cushion, not knowing where rates would go, and they've continued to go in our favor, better than what they have been. This proposal, again, is at that 2.75% interest rate fixed over the 20-year period at the interest rates that you see above, and only action of the council can change that. So if lower interest rates are available as a possibility at the call date in 2000, and I think it's 27 on this issue, you could prepay or refund into lower interest rates. But if interest rates go up and the city accepts this bid tonight, you're locked in and you continue to pay this for the full duration of the 20 years. So these results again came in quite a bit below the projections that you reviewed about a month ago. Devin, did you have? No. Okay. What I was going to mention is at this point, Mayor, if you'd like to vote on this first, we could do that, or I could talk about the second issue as well. Whatever.
No, we'll vote on this one first.
One thing you might want to mention is that because of all the numbers involved,
yes,
we're lowering the amount we have to take out of the undesignated surplus by what, $40,000?
I think it's 60,000.
60,000.
Yep.
Good point.
Yep.
Because of the way the savings came in, the interest and all that.
Yep, and the premium bid that they gave us
So
allowed us to
it'll be
reduce what cash we needed.
1.96 million out of the city cash instead of, I think it was 2.25 before.
2.5 before. Yep.
So about $65,000 less that'll be coming out of the undesignated surplus.
All right, everybody got that?
Mm-hmm.
We have a motion?
Move to suspend the rules.
Second.
Motion is second to suspend. Roll call.
Morissette.
Yes.
Alms.
Yes.
DeZiel.
Yes.
Weber.
Yes.
Atkins Hoggett.
Yes.
Hall.
Yes.
Motion's approved. Rules are suspended.
Move to adopt resolution 10-19.
Second.
Got a motion is second to approve. All those, or I'm sorry, discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's approved. Sorry. Discussion and possible action on resolution 11-19, a resolution awarding the sale of general obligation promissory notes series 2019B.
Thank you, Mayor. The other handout, the 2.2 million 2019B issue, same bond rating applies to this issue as the Series A issue that we talked about. So I won't go through that report again. But if you look at the bid tab for this issue, which is a page in, you'll see we ended up with 5 bids on this. Baird out of Milwaukee was the winning bidder. On this issue, we had a couple local and also one out of Dallas, Texas on this issue. Their bid has a true interest rate, the Baird bid, of 2.19%. You'll see the other bids go up to about 2.33, so fairly tight bidding on this issue as well. If you go to the last page of this handout, we also had a pre-sale report on this issue. Again, this is the one we paid in full over 10 years, dealing more of the vehicles, equipment, capital projects, or capital equipment over the next 2 years that the city has. And on this one, you'll notice the interest rates there from that Baird bid. In the middle of the page, the pre-sale true interest rate was expected at about 3.11%. And this is coming in just under 1% lower than that at about 2.19%. What we were able to do, they did pay a fairly large premium on this, so we're applying that, and we moved principal up, paying it back faster, but staying within that total debt levy, the target that we talked about at that last meeting. The next 2 years, 2020 budget and 21, the total levy for paying back principal and interest on the debt with these 2 issues added to it is expected to be very close to what it was for this past year budget that you just finished. So we were able to keep that in line with what we talked about at that last meeting. But actually, because of the bid, the way the bid came in, mature principal faster than we had anticipated about a month ago when we talked about that plan. So again, really strong bids. I would certainly encourage you to accept this bid from Baird as well. And I think there's a resolution to that effect you would need to act on. But if there's any questions on this second issue, I'd be happy to answer those beforehand.
Good news.
Move to suspend the rules.
Second.
Motion is second to suspend the rules. Roll call.
Morissette.
Yes.
Alms. DeZiel.
Yes.
Weber.
Yes.
Atkins Hoggett.
Yes.
Hall.
Yes.
Motion's approved. Rules are suspended.
Move to adopt resolution 11-19.
Second.
Motion and second to adopt resolution 11-19. Discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's approved.
Mayor, council, thank you very much.
Thank you, Sean.
Thanks, Sean.
Have a nice ride home. Think about us. Discussion and possible action on approving Market and Johnson as a construction company to build a proposed fire building. Chief.
Honorable Mayor, Common Council members, this proposal was approved by Finance Committee to the Common Council. This issue dates back to the late 1980s when Liz Moline got some information that Dean Rossing, the chief, was looking for more space. So I don't know if you wanted me to cover the whole 32 years,
why don't you do that?
or if you just wanted
Yeah, we got plenty of time.
Well, Liz can help.
I think we covered most of the things in the information on the issue sheet. I'm willing to take any questions or comments on that. Market and Johnson, as I said earlier, they're here. They're doing a lot of work in the city. They were the low qualified bidder. With us tonight is Randy Lefebvre, who is going to be the project manager. Randy lives in town here, so it's going to be great working with him. Also, Todd Mayoff from Brunton Architects, who's been here the whole time, been working with us for years and keeping us on track and budget. We've got a pretty tight budget to work with, and they've been very helpful along the way. So, if you have any other questions about the project.
Anybody got questions? Do we have a motion?
Move to approve.
Second.
Motion and second to approve. Again, discussion.
I just want to say thanks for everything that you're doing. I mean, this is incredible what this came in at. So.
Well, I said earlier, I want to thank Bill, for one, who's been here a long way, Brenda, who has traveled lots of fire stations with me, Mike Johnson for helping with all the stuff with redevelopment. Everybody's been helping, all the firefighters, the committee from the fire department. It's really been a team effort and wouldn't have happened. As I said earlier, we're all stretched pretty thin, but everybody's helped out and made it happen to this point.
I do have one question. What do the firefighters think of the building, just overall?
They like it. We had the committee, and we actually came to consensus with the final product from the committee. We were able to address a few changes along the way and work with Brunton, and thankfully they all came in at budget, a few changes, structural changes in that, just in the layout. So the committee was at a consensus that they liked it. So
great.
I have a question. The recommendation or on your motion is to accept the bid. Is that? But in the issue, you were requesting the ability to make change orders under $15,000.
Yes.
And that I haven't sensed that was included in any motion.
It should be.
It was in the finance recommendation.
Yeah, it should be on there.
It wasn't the way it was worded.
It wasn't specifically stated, but that probably would be a good idea so that it's on the record, so that.
Yeah, and I mean, if the issue
So just
sheet.
give the amount.
I'll amend the motion to allow
It's up to 15,000.
Up to 15,000.
And then with the total, with the contingency built in, is $6,954,320 in there. So
moved.
Okay. Who seconded that?
Second.
We good with it? Good with that? Okay. Further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's approved.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Chief. Nice job. Thank you. Very good job. Discussion and possible action on an annexation agreement between discussion and possible action on creation of ad hoc committee for review of the proposal submitted for the comprehensive plan and to serve as a steering committee for the comprehensive plan process. Thank you.
Mike Johnson asked this be put on as part of the RFP. It requires or has a detail in there that a committee be appointed to review the RFP, and also then to be, Mike suggested we potentially have a kind of a steering committee as a guide through the process. Is that what? Say it right?
Yeah, there'll be a steering committee. I fully anticipate there'll be other committees that'll be established along the way, specific to different areas of the plan: transportation, land use, natural resources, housing. So this would be that overall steering committee, though, after we get through the selection process.
Right. So the committee would consist of the mayor, council member, one plan commission member, and then 3 or 4 staff members.
I thought there was an outside person, no?
According to what's in the RFP, right, Mike? It's the
On this one,
I think
no,
the plan
not
commission member would be.
the plan commission. Yeah,
would not be. That probably would be someone other than Randy, maybe.
there will need to be a
No,
lot of
just need to be
outside
appointed.
involvement in different committees. Yes, absolutely.
Are we going to pick which person from the plan commission we put on there?
be appointed by them.
Or is that?
Well,
done?
I think tonight, we're probably, are they just approving the committee, Mike, and then next week come back with
I
the
just want to
appointments?
have it ready to go so when the applications start rolling in at the end of the month that I
Right,
can,
so
or proposal.
if you approve it tonight, then we would put on for either the organizational meeting or the April 22nd meeting.
Just the creation of
committee.
it's the creation of the committee, and then you'd make appointments to it at the organizational meeting, correct?
Or at
Mayor
the-
makes the appointments subject to council approval. That's what's proposed here.
So either next Tuesday or the following Monday, we would have that.
Is this the same type of steering committee that was used the last time, you know?
In this process, no, I'm unsure. In 09?
No, I do not believe, there was nothing from the council.
There wasn't a
I mean, there was no ad hoc committee appointed. I mean, I know there were subcommittees that worked on it, but not a formal.
Okay.
We have a motion.
I'd move to,
I'll second.
yeah.
We got a motion, a second to approve. Discussion.
I like the mix, Mike, with staff and elected officials, and I think that's really helpful. So I like that you're going to get a lot of different perspectives on it. Yep.
Awesome. Thank you.
Okay, further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's approved. Discussion and possible action on annexation agreement between the City of Hudson and Hearth Development LLC for parcel 020-1085-30-30-000 and 020-1085-20-0000.
I'm going to take some time on this one too, just because I think it's taken a long time for us to get to this point. So in your packets, these next two items are obviously one and the same, right? So you have an agreement and we have an ordinance. And I'm going to walk through it because I think they both relate to both the capital cost study that's in your packets as well as the budget study. So if you'll remember, that's the process we go through. We annex property. So on the Lee property, they did the same thing, right? On this one specifically, I'm going to hit the high points. There were existing deferred assessments in the amount of $152,828.21. In the agreement, those are to be paid prior to and as a condition of annexation. I have been provided payment for those, for that amount tonight. Also, an additional payment for 5 years in taxes to the town of Hudson. That payment also came tonight. If you look at the agreement, in addition to that, there's $147,000 approximately that is attributed to potential future improvements to Vine and Carmichael intersection. You'll see as an attachment or as an exhibit to the agreement, there's a concept that shows a roundabout type facility. This additional payment in combination with the payment of the existing deferred assessment is intended to be there as a total sum of $300,000 that if that work is to occur within the next 5 years, that would be the cap that property would pay as their proportionate share of that specific type of improvement. In all likelihood, I don't anticipate that scenario is going to play out in the next 5 years for a couple of reasons, but most notably because when we look at the expansion, the ultimate expansion of the Carmichael Road corridor, we're looking at 4 lanes, correct? And with that, it wouldn't make any sense for us to do that work unless we did exit 2 at the same time. And we all know doing exit 2, the redevelopment of that takes 6 to 8 years to even get through that process. So in all likelihood, a roundabout or any type of major improvement to Vine and Carmichael isn't anticipated in the first 5 years after annexation. What is included, if you look at your capital cost study, is a number of off-site improvements associated with the site. So you have water, stormwater, there's nothing for water, but stormwater, wastewater, and then off-site transportation improvements. Those amounts in there show what the developer's costs are to accomplish those things. So you'll have $1.4 million, I think is the one that stands out for improvements to off-site transportation facilities. It's anticipated, like in the Lee property annexation, that the developer would take on that cost because they can do it at a lower cost than the city most likely could. But that will include an expansion of the intersection of Vine and Carmichael to make it safer and function much, much better in the short term. Okay, so if you look at section 5.3 in the capital cost study, that's the one that calls out the specific transportation improvements that would occur as part of this initial phase. You'll see that we get dedication of right-of-way to the city on both Vine and Carmichael. All on-site road and utility improvements are paid by the developer. Trying to think what else I want to run through here. You'll look at, there's a concept in the capital cost study that shows the basic idea of what the development wants, or what the developer is desirous of doing ultimately. Again, that's subject to going through all of the approval processes that we go through on any development. So all the zoning processes, as well as the platting processes of preliminary and final plat. So there's a lot of work to be done so before we get to a point where shovels in the ground. So that's the agreement in a nutshell. Catherine, did I miss anything? I kind of...
No, you covered
okay.
The little white lines that are next to the road, is that sidewalks?
Yes, should be.
Good. I assume so.
I'll move we accept the annexation agreement between the city and the Hearth Development LLC.
Got a motion?
Second.
Got a motion second. Discussion?
Mike, are you comfortable with the agreement?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I know
It
you've
took
worked
a
on it
while.
a long time, that's
Yeah.
why I'm asking. You know the details.
Anybody else?
I think the one thing I've heard from a lot of my constituents and others is that we have to have walking, biking facilities along there, safe passageway along there, and it's included, both on Vine and on Carmichael. So I think that's a big step forward.
Yep.
Yeah, there was a big discussion on one of the social media about walking paths and biking paths along that corridor, because there were some big concerns about that. So,
And the high point on that, I think that's a very good point, is that the trail that currently extends on the north side of Vine Street and kind of dead ends at our lift station, that trail will be extended all the way to the intersection, and will improve the crosswalks, and there'll also be a trail that heads south through the development.
Nice.
So.
All right, well, this has been a long time coming, Mike.
Yeah.
Congratulations on
I think
getting us to this
Liz,
point.
you remember, I think she's going to cry. She's been through this a couple times.
All right, we got a motion second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's approved. Discussion and possible action on ordinance 6-19 approving a petition for direct annexation by unanimous approval from the town of Hudson to the city of Hudson, annexing parcel 020-1085-30-00 and 020-1085-20-000, petitioned by Edna F.L. Atwood Revocable Trust.
So this is the ordinance that once it's published, would annex the property into the city. Included in this packet was the budget analysis that talks about what type of revenues we can potentially anticipate from the real estate taxes collected in the neighborhood. One thing to point out is, we don't really have any comparables for apartment pads. We haven't developed a new apartment project in a number of years, so it's hard for us to project. We believe the values look good and are conservative, and it looks like you see about a net revenue of approximately $171,000 annually in property tax. That's after you take off our costs for providing other services like fire, police, things like that. Public Works.
Move to suspend the rules.
Second.
Got a motion second to suspend the rules. Roll call.
Morissette.
Yes.
Holmes.
Yes.
DeZiel.
Yes.
Weber.
Yes.
Atkins Hoggett.
Yes.
Hall.
yes.
Motion's approved. Rules are suspended.
Move to adopt ordinance 6-19.
Second.
Motion second to adopt. Further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's approved. Thanks,
you,
Mike.
everybody.
Nice job. Congratulations. I don't know. I'd say that the under won tonight.
What's that?
I think the under won tonight.
Over under versus the time.
Over under. So Mirage won, I think.
Versus the clock? It won? Yeah, oh, okay. I don't know exactly what the over-under was, but I guess I'd
I think 11 o'clock was.
I would have put it at 11:30. Anybody have any idea, Rebecca, who's winning the game? Game over? Who's that? Okay. Way to go, Mike. I'm trying to get it here on the phone. I apologize, but the only other thing I have to add is congratulations to all of you who won re-election. Nice job. It's the first time I think we've been together since election night, so congratulations. And
It was a tough race, but we pulled it off.
look forward to another dynamic year.
Do we meet Tuesday for the?
Organizational meeting is at 7 o'clock on
Yep.
Tuesday
Yep.
for reappointments. And
I'm going to be out of town for that.
Okay.
I can call in if that's possible.
You can do
We'll see
it.
what's. I don't know if there's anything else that would be added to the agenda, but I don't. Other than that.
it's mainly, well, I'll get it out. We'll get it out tomorrow, and then you can let us know.
It's just appointments.
It's just pretty much appointments. But I'll get it out. We'll get it out to you right away so you can make that decision, and we can bring the phone in like we did with Jim one time at that meeting. So.
All right. Anybody else? Anybody got anything? Got a motion?
Move to adjourn.
Motion and second to adjourn. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion's approved. We stand adjourned. Thanks, everybody.